Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. And we believe through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. And right before we started recording, all of us were having some pretty good conversations. Obviously, any room that has Dr. B in it is gonna have some jokes, but I think Dr. B is frozen. He looked like I hope that look on his face stays in the recording when I edit it. But we were having some interesting conversations about community, about moving forward, about finance, about mobilizing community. And I think, we talked about maybe pushing this conversation back a little bit, but I think that it is a conversation worth getting into. And so we'll bring Dr. B back on the stage when he's unfrozen. We told him, he's not using his MWR funds for his for his internet, but just some great points to be made. And as the producer, I kind of regret that I didn't just hit the button and start recording, because we were saying some good stuff. We could have clipped it up. It took out anything we didn't want to end up on the show. But since we are here, it's three of us. Dr. B will be back here shortly. But I want to start out and ask y'all brothers, how are y'all feeling? Let's start with Brother Ray. No, I'm not going to say all that.
Oh, I appreciate you, bro. Well, to be honest, how I'm feeling right now, especially after talking with y'all before we started recording, and I'm feeling kind of positive. I'm feeling kind of positive because, again, it never ceases to amaze me that some of the stuff that Rod brings up, some of the stuff that all of you brothers bring up, and it just does my soul good, So basically, what I'm trying to do is change my mindset, from being unbothered to being disappointed. The things that are going on in the world are going to go on in the world. The things that are going on in this country are going to go on in this country, and we have our voices, and we know how to use them. We know how to encourage other people to use their voices. Knowing that we're basically almost roughly a year and a half from midterm elections, we can definitely use our voices to make sure that we encourage our folks to get out and cast their ballots, because that is our voice. And our voices far too long go unheard, but we need to make sure that we do what we need to do to get out and get the word spread and take people to the polls, do whatever it is we have to do, and remind people of what's going on today further down the road, because we tend to have amnesia when it's time to vote. So right now I'm feeling really positive, brothers, and I really appreciate it. So I'll toss to whoever might want to go next.
Brother say he's feeling positive. I'm gonna jump in so I'm not last. Jump in so I'm not last. No, I agree with you, Ray. I'm feeling positive. I think I'm always feeling positive, even if we start to show off feeling how we feel about everything that's going on in the world that we crazily find ourselves in, man, after just spending some time with y'all brothers. And then especially what we're gonna call that, Black Men with Purpose after recording, when we cut the conversations we have after we turn the cameras off. But no, it's always good to be in the presence of successful, inspiring, thoughtful, insightful brothers, and it definitely enriches me. And so I'm feeling like the political process the same, remind people to vote. We want to encourage people to be active in their local processes to what's happening in your state, in your city, in your county, in your township, your parish, you know, thinking about the mayoral vote that happened. So we voted here in Alexandria. We had a vote for the mayor and city council during the same time as the presidential elections. And I must say, I'm very pleased with city council, with the mayor. Definitely, you know, she's sharp. She held some positions that I disagreed with. They were trying to build we're trying to build a new stadium over here by Potomac. I'm like, it ain't nothing out there, and that traffic is bad. You think you're gonna build a stadium out there? Like, we were totally against that, but I totally stood for what she wants to do and bring economy to Alexandria. Specifically, you know, obviously this is a very wealthy area, but that wealth is contained within a specific community. And she is very dedicated to opportunities for that wealth to be spread around more to the community at whole. And I wholeheartedly support that. So it was like, I support the basis of what she stood on. We all voted down this idea that they was going to build a stadium out here, but still have leadership that you can support. And, you know, me and Rob were talking a little bit before we came on. And so I guess when neither of us have to work anymore, we going on the road, we're going to start an accountability. You know, we're going to be like the Dave Ramsey's of accountability for young Black men and responsibility. So, man, he put it in the air, man. We're going to make it happen. We coming to a church near you to teach your young men how to be responsible with their money, with their behavior, with their education, with their employment. You know, you can be cool, but we'll show you how to show up for job interviews or for events and things like that. Coming to a town near you, call us. And with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Rod. We'll let Dr. B close us out this segment. So I'm gonna pass it to Rod.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, that's good stuff. I'm glad you put that in the atmosphere. That'll hopefully get us to continue to think about it and conceptualizing, you know, what that would look like, and hopefully others to start thinking about it. You know, because while I recognize that, you know, voting is critical to just being involved in the process, the electoral process that we have, the democracy that we still have, no matter what folk think about it, to be involved in that process. But, you know, it was, as Ray was talking about it, I said, you know, but more importantly, you got to get engaged before it's time to vote, you know, and I think that's the challenge. You know, you're voting for candidates that don't represent, you know, your values and what you stand for, or you're just not engaged at all. And so because you're not engaged, you're like, well, that's no sense to me even finishing the process because I never started it. You know, that sometimes it's hard to just show up, you know, and vote for who. You know, I'm just going to vote for all the candidates of this party or that party when they may not represent you in the way that you want to be represented. So, I just, I guess, long for the day where people will get engaged. It's like, you know, not reading anything regarding Project, you know, 2025 before they just showed up. You know, whether you didn't believe, you know, one party was going to get elected or not, but at least understand what's coming, because it might be some things in there that you were okay with. You know, even though the how, I think a lot of people, you know, having challenges with, and it's all because, you know, governing is different than campaigning. If we could just understand that one fact, you know, and then govern ourselves accordingly to recognize, okay, as I'm listening to them talk about, you know, the support they need and what they're going to do, how do I hold them accountable for that once they get in office? You know, because a lot of us want to cast our vote, and then we're gonna cast it again in 4 years. That's when you're gonna see us again. You know, maybe, right? So,
Yeah.
so we just have to stay engaged. And you made a good point about the community. I think, you know, if you're gonna live and work and build your life within a community, you have to be engaged in other ways as well. Right? Otherwise, your mindset is saying that I'm okay with people doing to me, giving to me, treating me any way they want to. That's the message. So hopefully we can recognize that and get in early and often to let our voice be heard, and set the standard of what we want and how we want to be treated, you know, what we will and will not, you know, put up with. So, but looking forward to continuing to have this conversation. I mean, I think as human beings, forget about race and ethnicity. As human beings, I think we all need it and deserve it. But with that comes, and you know, as we talked about in the pre-session, with that comes a certain level of responsibility and accountability, you know, and we have to be willing to hold ourselves as well as those that we're charged to raise, and those that we care for, and those in our community, you know. I know when I was growing up, you know, everybody got to say something about how I acted in the streets. Oh, and yeah, I'm gonna call your mama too, you know. So by the time you get to the house, you know, yeah, she'd been called 4 or 5 times if you hadn't already been beat.
Yeah.
You know,
beating's on the way.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, we have to care about one another, you know, not necessarily the beating part. Not everybody, you know, subscribes to that. But, you know, just caring enough to be willing to hold people accountable and to say something when you see something that you know is not right or acceptable. So with that, man, I'll turn it over to Dr. B. I'm glad you're back with us, brother. It's good to see your head moving around a little bit.
Yeah. All I know was last thing I heard was, if Dr. B, we got jokes, and then my phone went out. So I don't know what y'all saying, but I'm trying to get the gist of it. But based on what y'all was saying, I think the one thing too, we got to be able to have people, you got to be able to encourage yourself and never give up. I know a lot of times we have people in our community have given up, especially when we talk about voting. We have some people's like, my vote don't matter anyway. So they've given up for whatever reason. Rod and John's road show, y'all gonna go out and show people. And I think that's a key thing, that some people have just given up in the process or given up. And when you give up, you know, you really feel bad. When you think about it, there might be something you thought you felt better if you gave up. But when you actually gave up and you thought about it, it's like, man, if I just could have hung on, you know, just a little while longer, if I just maybe read one more chapter, you know, if I just would have listened one more time without giving up, I would be better off. And so I think, you know, if we just teach people or just share with people just the importance of not giving up. You know, I tell people all the time, people's like, oh, you must be smart because you got your degree. No, I was just too dumb to quit class. That's all it was. And so we just got to, hey, we just can't give up. You know, find a way to encourage yourself, you know, network with other people that is doing, not necessarily doing better than you, but people who are where you're trying to go. You know, if it's education wise, if it's financial, if it's just being a better person, try to connect with people that inspire you, that encourage you. So that would be my kickoff. Let's not give up. It may look ugly, but we can't give up.
It may look ugly, but we can't give up. You know, and I think that's a beautiful kickoff, man. I think we all came in with some great stuff. And so when we talk about this, so just What was that? Last week, the end of last week into the beginning of the weekend. What we talked about in the beginning, John Hope Bryant and Operation Hope, they had a conference at the Civil Rights Museum, Dream Forward, talking about an infrastructure for inclusive economics and a Black America business plan that they talked about the need for a new business plan for us moving forward. And, love what Rod said, some people vote, you're going to see them again in 4 years. Like that's not a plan. That's a civic duty, but that's a wish and a hope, and I did also kind of want to piggyback on when he talked about how by the time you got home, it was a couple of calls to mom already, or maybe you got touched a couple of times. Whether you agree with corporal punishment or not, that was an indicator of a community that cared, and no matter how you felt about it, that meant that there were people that cared about you that were becoming personally involved. And they talk about the phenomenon of people, when there's a crowd of people and there's distress, they all believe that somebody else is going to take care of it. And they show so many examples where something tragic and horrific happened amongst the crowd of people because everybody else made themselves believe that somebody else was going to do something about it. And that example that Rod gave was an example of a community that was ready and engaged and was not going to wait on somebody else to do something about an issue arose. And that issue might have been me acting up at school, and I might have got beat down by 4 or 5 of my grandmother's neighbors before I got home for the 5th and 6th beat down. But this was a collective of people that cared about me and wanted to see me become something positive and someone who they could be proud of. And I anchor with that example because when we think about it, we can all, I think we all have complaints about what is going on in our society, what is going on with our community, what is going on with our children. I think one of the things I really enjoy about this collective is that when we talk about generations, we have the intelligence to recognize that there is a need for mentoring and hands-on. In this collective right here, you're talking about mentors, coaches, supervisors. Like, we've been hands-on doing these things. And I think when you talk about dreaming forward and inclusiveness and a new business plan for America, I think for Black America specifically, our community, I think, yes, it does take a collective. I think it does take finance because, without some finance, you can't drive the engine. But I think it all will take us giving our best, our ideas, our dreams, our expertise, our experiences, and coming together. Like, they say no child left behind. Nobody's ideas should be left behind. Some of them are bad, but sometimes it takes a couple of bad ideas to get to a good one. You know what I mean? So, I think about that. And I think dreaming forward, I think that it's a good thing for us. What is the dream? One of the things, and I'm going to stop talking, I always get on here and yap too much. But one of the things I always think about is like, when we think about communities, I think about guys I grew up with, man, that got into gangs and drugs and just all kinds of activities. But I specifically and distinctly remember when we were younger kids and we all had dreams. And, one of the conversations we would always have, when our friends come back and now, maybe we don't go to the same middle school for a couple of years. And then we get back to high school and it's like they're a thug and a gangster. And it's like, man, I remember such and such when we was growing up, they was nerdy. They collected comic books. They wanted to be a scientist when they grew up. And I think a lot of times we forget, that people had dreams. They had things that they wanted to be. And somehow or another, life came along and diverted them from that. And so my contribution to this Dream Forward conversation is, while we talk a lot about behaviors and we talk a lot about disciplines, I think it's also apropos to talk about what are the dreams deferred? What are the opportunities where people have not gotten to fully express their creativity, their desire to make a positive impact? Like I think, you know, there are some very crazy, cruel people that came in the world and their goal was to be the bad guy in the story. But I think the majority of people had a goal. They had things that they wanted to be, they wanted to do, that they strove for. And I think at some point, the world, the society we lived in, circumstances and happenstance took them off of that goal. So what do we say to them? How do we, you know, I mean, because sometimes it's too late. Like, it's too late to maybe, it's too late for any of us to play in the NFL, but it's not too late for us to be impactful. You know what I mean? So, you know, what do we say to someone, you know, when that dream seems to be slipping away? And I see who I see nodding their head the most. Rod nodding his head the most, but I'm gonna hit Dr. B, man. What you think, man? Talk to us.
Man, I think too, a lot of times when people have dreams, a lot of times people have not had anybody to hear them and actually support them. You know, they have people that will hear them and say, you can't make it, but they don't have somebody that listen to them and say, well, this is how you can get it done. It's different, but you can get it done. And I think, because like now, look at us. I mean, for most of us, we was told, go out and get a job. You got to make it with a job. Now, you know, my daughter and them, they don't do it the same way. It's like, no, let me find a way where I can use my intellect, my tools, you know, my skill set, and I can make money differently. And so it's just a matter of somebody hearing them and listening to their dream, listen to what they want to do and how they can help them get past the obstacles that they're facing. And I think for us as a people, we have to find out what the obstacles are, because I was having this conversation the other day. Like for us as a people, since Dr. King, our thing was, let's push education to get people out of, you know, the poverty-stricken level. But what about the people that say, I was born in the hood, I live in the hood, and I'm gonna die in the hood? They still good people, but how do we connect with those people and make them say, or make them understand that their dreams, that their opportunities, even though they may be different, they still are valued? And I think that's one thing we can do, is like, let's bring everybody else along, even though it may not be the same way I want to do it or the way I would have done it, but let me hear them out and see if I can help them decipher a path forward and being successful, so they can feel good about who they are, you know, so they can feel about the opportunities they contribute to the community. And, you know, when people feel like they bring something to the table, I think they'll do more when they get into the room. But if they don't feel like they're valued at the table, they ain't gonna do nothing. But if they feel like they're being positive when they get into the room, yeah. So that's what we got to do, is find out how do we get to where you got folks that are millionaires, they feel good about what they're doing, but how do we get to the people that's making, you know, minimum wage? They still matter. How do we make them matter? So after that, I'm gonna just yield the floor. I'll pass it on to Rod, the elder statesman. One with the knowledge.
Yeah, a bunch of opinions.
They're
But no,
valuable
I mean,
opinions.
yeah, that's a good point, you know. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, I think it strikes the mindset that people have. And, you know, and quite honestly, I will tell you, when I was younger, I didn't necessarily understand how important the mindset that you carry each and every day, in and out of situations, in and out of, you know, decision-making situations, how the mindset really has a huge role and ultimately what you decide or don't decide to do, you know. And so I just think about, growing up and how some people's mindset was just different. We had people in our neighborhood. You could go to the schoolyard and you could play or attempt to play. There were some people that just approached it differently from a mental aspect, and they just would not be denied, And and I would tell you, I think that's why I love seeing, Dawn Staley do her thing for South Carolina, knowing that, I lived in the same projects that she came from, there at 25th and Diamond, and but the mindset that she had, even hooping as a female in Philadelphia, where it was, you can go to any schoolyard on any given day, or especially on the weekend, and you're going to get some good runs, or either you're going to get run off the court, one of the two, right? And so you approach it with a different mindset when okay, you got to lace them up if you're going to come up here and play. So I would just say that, getting people to really do some mindfulness training, just to really understand how they approach things from a mental aspect, because a lot of times that hinders you from making the decisions that you need to make. I know I need to get up and work out, but day after day, month after month, you don't do it. What's keeping me from doing it? Right. And just understanding that part of it, getting away from the procrastination, let me just get this done, being a person of action, right? Even if you get it, wrong or make a mistake along the way, you're taking action on things that you need to do. So I would just encourage anyone to approach it from a mindfulness perspective, and then just take action, as I, hear all the time now in the vernacular, fail fast, right? There will be failures, fail fast, and no, I'm not talking about relationships and marriages. So don't do that. No. You be careful in those choices, when you make that covenant commitment.
Dr. B, I think he talking about us, man.
No, I'm just so some people be like, oh, well, I heard somebody say fail fast. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. No. But no, I will I'll pass it on to Brother Ray. I appreciate your patience, brother.
I appreciate you, bro. But I did kind of feel attacked since I've been married the most out of everybody on here. But hey, you gotta have jokes. Hey, but one thing I would say, we always go back to that old saying: nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's why we got into mentorship. The bottom line, to me, that's why we got into mentorship, because one thing we wanted to do was make a difference, because somebody made a difference in our lives. For sure we had parents, grandparents, somebody made a difference in our life, but there was somebody outside of our family that made a difference, and I can tell you, one of the two people that made the biggest difference in my life outside of my family was my fifth and my sixth grade teachers. Mrs. Juanita Martin was my fifth grade teacher, and my sixth grade teacher was Mrs. Ernestine Brogdon. And those women invested in all of their kids, all of them. But it was just amazing how even though there might have been 30, 35 of us in the classroom, you never felt like you were one of the group. You always felt like she was directing her their heart and their soul towards you. That's just how personal they took it, and they took our successes and our failures personally, you know. And by whether it was by providing the encouragement and letting us see that they were invested in us. So as I got older and further away from elementary school, I thought about that. I thought about the lessons that they taught me. I thought about how I not only didn't want to let my mom and my dad down by, doing some of the stuff that some of my peers were doing, but I also wanted to make sure that Mrs. Brogdon and Mrs. Martin never heard anything negative about me. And anytime that they heard my name, they were like, "Yep, that was one of my students." And up until the time that they died, they could rattle off stuff about me, and that meant the world to me. So that having them invest in me made me want to invest in other people. So and that's why when we were talking about, by if we acted up in school or whatever, by the time we got home, there was 4 or 5 people that would have heard something and gotten phone calls, and then all of them made calls to mom and dad or whomever, and it was just like we had a village. We had a true village, even though it wasn't just our family. It was our neighbors. It was my best friend's mother. If I acted up, she was Raymond Butler. I heard about you in school today, and I'm sitting there cowering my head down with her, and she's giving me the finger wags and everything else, and and telling me I can do better. And instead of taking that, as a negative, I understood that and her name was Mrs. C. I understood that she cared, and she let me know that she cared. She was like another mother to me. She told me she loved me. So again, that's why we got into mentorship, because we had somebody that made a difference in our lives, and that's why we chose to do what we do and what we did through our military careers, because we want to make a difference in somebody else's life, and we saw what it was like to have someone that only cared about themselves. So when we got into the position, we were able to say, no, you know what? That's not the way to go about it. I'm going to make a difference, because I'm not going to be around forever, and somebody needs to hear what I have to say, and it's going to make a difference in their lives. So I feel like I'm rambling right now, fellas. So I'm gonna throw it back to you, John, because I know you got something good for me.
No rambling, man. You was talking. You was on point. You was on point. A big thing, when you talk about and we do want to talk about what really spurred this conversation, John Hope Bryant and Operation Hope and Dream Forward, the conference and the conversation. Obviously, I don't even want to call it the elephant in the room, but the topic of finances. And one of the things that Operation Hope, well, not one of the things, but when you talk about Operation Hope, you talk about John Hope Bryant as a well-known entrepreneur, those are two of the things that he pushes: is getting your credit together. And then he's a big proponent of entrepreneurship. I myself am a proponent of entrepreneurship, and I've dabbled in it, and I'm really working on making a return to it. But me personally, and fellas, I think if we all have similar answers, I think that even if we find ourselves sounding redundant, I think it's a topic that is worth continuing to discuss over and over again, but something that I think when we talk about our financial status as a community, I think that entrepreneurship is important, but a lot of our entrepreneurs are solopreneurs, or maybe an entrepreneur with an assistant. And I think it's important for us to get more so to a point where we're job creators in our communities and things like that. Owning a business is great, but being able to employ, whether, you might have a staff of 5, but that's 5 families that you're impacting. And I think that, again, we showed, like, Ray and Dr. B. Well, Dr. B was saying it, but as soon as he said it, I thought about Ray's daughter, got her own thing going on and, doing all these things. These young kids, they're not young kids. We're just older men now. These adults out here, they make it happen. And, but I think it's important too, we can make a lot of money as a solopreneur, as an entrepreneur, but I think we really change the trajectory of our community when we can become more than just entrepreneurs and we can become contributors to industry. And, we can build teams and, create financial and economic opportunities for people that are working for or with us, for them to start their own processes, to start their own businesses, their own entrepreneurial pursuits. So I think for me, that's important. And I'm going to pass it right back to the man that passed it just to me like 2 minutes ago. I'm going to pass it right back to Ray. Financially, what do you think we need to do?
Well, it's funny. When you were talking, we're talking about John Hope Bryant. Some of the things that he said when I was watching him on The Breakfast Club, I literally had to stop. I had to stop the video and go get pad and pen, because I'm like, this is going to help somebody in my network. I don't know who, but one of the things that he talked about, and I'm gonna give credit to Rod, because I know Rod talked about this in previous seasons, and he's talked about it several times. The generational wealth. And one of the things that John Hope Bryant said, the first thing he said was get a term life insurance policy. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, I have to stop. I've got to write this stuff down, because again, this is important. And again, Rod has talked about all this stuff: getting a term life insurance policy, creating a will, the earned income tax credits, getting your credit score up. And I think, John, you just mentioned that a little bit ago. He even mentioned home ownership. So all this stuff. These are things that we need to be encouraging. Thankfully, both of my girls own their own homes. My baby is trying to. I know she wants to buy investment properties, so she can literally rent out homes and things of that nature. But that's some of the things. One of the things that John Hope Bryant talked about was, again, the importance of home ownership, because if we don't own our own homes, all we're doing is renting to somebody, and we're basically paying them. And when it's all said and done, we have nothing but receipts left over. But if you invest in a home, you can take advantage of any tax breaks and things of that nature. So, and then the other things that he said was there was 3 types of mindsets: the surviving mindset, the thriving mindset, and the winning and building mindset. And that's where you got what you guys are talking about. Is trying to build and help other people build. So they can have the come up along with us. Our community needs to have the come up. So that's where I sit with it right there, fellas. So I'm gonna toss it to Rod, since I just used his name quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, of course, the topic of, finances, wealth, generational wealth in particular, we could talk about that every day, all day, for weeks on end. But I'll just go back first to, it requires a mindset change for a lot of people, right? A lot of us grew up and we weren't thinking about, who was building stuff for us or leaving stuff for us. So we wouldn't have to, struggle to get it on our own, giving us a hand forward, or a hand up. So I think that, but that requires, a mind shift change, right? I think also consumerism is something that requires us to be mindful of and really recognize why we're such huge consumers, right? Does it stem from the fact that, we listen to stories of our, parents and grandparents talk about what they couldn't get because they couldn't afford it or didn't have the means to get it. And so therefore, we make up in our mind that, when we get of age and get our job, hey, I'm gonna be the first person to drive a Mercedes in my family. And, which is cool. Everyone should have their own, dreams, goals, aspirations, but it gets you the same place as Dr. B's Ford at the same time. You might get there a little sooner, 2-3 minutes, but and you just think about, why you place such a value on things that other people are selling or peddling to you, and start getting on the other end of that exchange, like John said, where you're actually creating jobs and opportunities or creating things that other people, may want to purchase during the transaction. And then that allows you to create other jobs within the community. And then people within the community, when you get those jobs that, are extended to you, by people that, look like you and support you, take care of it so you can do your own. I would tell you, starting a business and bringing people on board to work, I would always be of the mindset that, let's figure out how you can do your own thing from jump, so now you have someone who's working with you or for you, but they know that you're committed to helping them pursue their dreams and goals and aspirations, so and then that starts to build that loyalty, that trust that we need to be successful, all of us. Instead of thinking that someone's going to try to get you just because someone else that might look like them got you before, you have to be willing to give people the opportunity to show you who they are for themselves. So, and again, I think it does require a huge mind shift change because the tools are out there for wealth building, wealth generation. And as I forget who it was, I was listening to one day who said that, some people have a scarcity mindset and other people believe, wow, there's money moving all around me. I just need to find out how I can get in the lane to get some of it. If that's, what you believe that you need to do. And then you have to be willing to do that. And sometimes it comes with making sacrifices, foregoing something today, some pleasure today for the opportunity to work from the beach every day, or to live on the beach every day and not work at all, but are you willing to make those sacrifices today for what you can get in the future? And some people are, some people aren't, and I get wanting to live your best life now because tomorrow's not promised, but you have to have the ability to enjoy today and plan for tomorrow at the same time, which requires you to be able to sometimes, divvy up your resources that afford you the opportunity to do both. And, so you can be extremely excited about the life you're living today, but knowing that a better future is even ahead for you, and not just for you, but for your family, because you're going to create some generational wealth, which does not mean you hand a kid a bag of money and say, go out and enjoy life. No, it comes with responsibility, accountability, a mindset where, you continue to build this. That's when you start getting into preservation of wealth, family trusts, tax strategies and tax planning. I mean, I think there's levels to it, and you have to be committed to learning, understanding, and then be willing to go to the next level if that's what you aspire to do. But having said that, I'll turn it over to the money man himself, Dr. B. Will. Over to you, brother.
What money? I'm on a fixed income. I'm a retiree on a fixed income. That's what I do.
Hence the money.
Anyway.
Hence the money. The brother been on a fixed income since I've known him. I mean, literally. Hey, remember? Hey, bro, Popeye's having a special.
That was you.
One free.
That was you getting the free one.
Give me the free one.
That was you getting the free one. B, since you going over there, man, let me get the free one.
Oh, way to flip that around, Rod.
Right. We know who it was. He didn't even want to drive to go pick it up. He was like, "Yeah, since you going, just bring me back the free one." Anyway, I think everything what y'all have said about how to generate wealth, I know for me, before I learned how to save, I thought I was too poor to save. And that's a mentality I think that we need to start with. No matter how much money you make, you can save something. It's just a matter, if you can only save $1 a week, be committed to saving that $1 a week. Just save enough that you don't have to go back and spend it. Because, that's what we do. We'll save $5 for 2 weeks, and then we'll go back and get that $10. But we got to learn how to save just enough and be consistent with that, and then just have a systematic system of investment. Again, I picked that up, learned that through my own investments. That's, a lot of people, that's how you do. You save systematically, and then over time, you'll learn how to save more. And now you're in a position where, guess what? Now I can get those policies. Now I can start building my generational wealth, because now I got money to go into the market. But I think for me, let me just say for me, until I learned how to save, I thought I was too poor to save. And so I know for me at my church, one of the things I instruct people, give $1 a day to the church and give $1 a day to yourself. And what you do with that dollar, and it may not seem like a lot, and you say, well, that's only $30 a month for myself and $30 a month to the church. But what you're doing now, you're conscious of what you're spending. And I learned that this white guy told me 25 years ago. I go out to eat with him, or even go to the convenience store. He would pull out his wallet and he would write down how much money he spent for the day. And what he was doing was conscientiously thinking, hey, I said my budget a day was going to be $8. I end up spending only $7 today. And so, and you just be surprised, not that you're thrifty or cheap, but like you said, right, we're building wealth, and you got to start somewhere. And I think a lot of times in our community, if we just let people know, even if you only save 50 cents a day or 50 cents a week, where you don't have to go back, and then in 3 months you go from 50 cents, okay, you know what, I think I save $1 a week now. But it just makes you think about what you're actually spending every day, especially if you got to go back to work every day. How many times you stop at the vending machine? How many times you stop at Starbucks on the way to work? You pick up that, you're trying to eat healthy, so you pick up, that smoothie, but that smoothie's $8 a day. That it kind of adds up. But now guess what? If I go to the store and buy my own fruit, buy my own ingredients, get my own blender, guess what? Now that smoothie is only costing me $3 a day. So just those type of things. You just got to get in the mindset that you're never too broke or you're never too poor to save. you know, and I think a lot of people miss that concept that if I got to be wealthy to save. And no, that's how people become wealthy, because they learn how to save. So with that, I'll turn that back over to Mr. John, our fearless
real
leader.
quick though, you know that so the word mindset comes up again, you know, and it just lets you know how important that is. And the other thing, you know, you talk about writing down or keeping track of what you spend every day. It has a lot to do with accountability, you know. And I will tell you, think of the number of people that don't go back every month and look at what they spent their resources on.
Yeah.
Because if you look back, it will also help you shift some of your habits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just think it's important to do that because you have to be accountable for every bit of increase that you're blessed with. There's accountability that comes along with that, you know, and the more accountable you are, the better you become at managing that resource and using it wisely, you know. So but that's a great point. I just wanted to mention that little edict about mindset, because that's critical.
Yeah. Two things. When we talk about mindset, Bishop Noel Jones wrote a book years ago, maybe 12 years ago, talk about the battle of the mind. You know, he was mostly talking about how in your spiritual walk with God, a lot of times that battle starts with the mind. But that when you look at that, our mindset is every day. If every morning you get up and you worry about the troubles of the world, you're probably gonna have a bad day, because that's what you focus on. You know what I'm saying? So it depends on where your mindset is. If your mindset is, I want to have a better life, no matter what that costs me, I want to have a better life for my children. It's gonna cost you something, but it's gonna be worth it. I mean, how many times in each of us on this call, how many of us had to make sacrifice, but when you made that sacrifice, it was worth it? And that's what we have to get people to understand, that your sacrifice is going to be worth it. You may not like it in the beginning, but once that sacrifice becomes a habit, and now you can see the fruits from your sacrifice, it's worth it.
That's, to me, that's instant gratification versus delayed gratification is what you're talking about right there, B. You know, people always, we want stuff, we want it now, but it doesn't feel any less good to have worked for it and taken a little bit more time and delayed that gratification. It doesn't feel any less good when we finally achieve that goal. So to me, that's the instant gratification versus delayed gratification, which you just talked about, bro.
Woo! You brother's talking to me.
And the last thing I'll say is the greatest resource that we have that we'll not get more of is time. The time cost of money, you know, that's a real thing, especially when you look to how whatever you save or invest, how it compounds over the years. So the longer you wait, that's time you won't get back. And that is the most important aspect of all of it. You know, your ability to earn, you know, your ability to have experiences, and you won't get time back. So make the best use of that resource, right? And then when you think about it, back to mindset, it goes into how you spend your time, being conscious of that, recognizing that some things and some people, they just don't deserve your time, you know? But you have to make those conscious choices, and your mindset is what helps you to do that, you know? And the more that you can do that, the more you can start stacking good choices, good decisions on top of one another, the better life you get to build. you know? So when you get 50 and look back, you can say, hey, 50, 40, 30, 60. You look in the mirror, you look like decisions you've made in your life. That's exactly what you look like. You don't have to look around and wonder how did you, no.
Well, Rod sound like somebody's uncle.
Hey, that's a fact. You born looking like your parents, but as you get older, you look like your decisions.
You look like your
decisions.
decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, don't be looking like, I wish, I wish I didn't have this beard cut. No. It points to your decisions. So I just encourage that, we gotta make good choices. And that's my message for, when we do our road show and start visiting some of these churches in these urban and rural communities to, encourage your young people to just make good choices. You don't have to be hard for nobody. You don't have to be gangster for nobody. I know people do things out of self-preservation because they believe that's the only way they can make it. Look for another way. Because the one thing, and I think I was listening to Dr. Boyce Watkins one day talk about, it's like kids are valuable commodities, valuable assets, and he always talks about, thanking his mama for not aborting him. And he grew up to become a valuable asset for her. When it came time for her to want to pay off her house, he's like, how much you owe? I got you. When she wanted to do other things, he's like, hey, I got you. You raised me, you sacrificed for me. I became a valuable asset for you. We have to think about it like that's why there were so many kids born back in generations before us. We need some folk to tend the farm, so let's have some kids. Hopefully we have some boys, but we have to think about it like that. But even that required that those guys that thought like that, they were committed to their family. No matter how else they acted, no matter what else they did, they were committed to their family and taking care of them, And we need that level of commitment today. I will tell you, it will change how a lot of our communities look and operate if we could get that level of commitment from especially the men within those communities, Say to whom much is given, much is required and expected. That's true. It's time for men to stand up, So I will leave it at that. That's my last word. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Back to you, brother.
Robbie said that every week, man. That tickled me so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, man, y'all brothers, man, broke that down to the very last compound, our choices, our commitment, our strategy, sacrifice, delayed gratification, building something bigger than yourself. And we've all recognized all these values in our life, man. And we have been able to come here. I definitely think this is worth carrying into our next episode. So we're just going to call this Dream Forward Part 1. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk more about Dreaming Forward. We got some more anecdotes. We got plenty more that we can pull from this topic. But I thank y'all gentlemen tonight for what you shared. And as we close tonight, I want to drop a quote that I think is applicable to the conversation that we've had tonight. And it says, I believe in destiny, but I also believe that you can't just sit back and let destiny happen. A lot of times an opportunity might fall into your lap, but you have to be ready for that opportunity. You can't sit there waiting on it. A lot of times you're going to have to get out there and make it happen. And that quote is from none other than Spike Lee. So we're out here making it happen. And until next time, we out.